Good morning. I'm Rabbi Daniel Geretz, and I am posting my very first live stream video Dvar Torah. So you'll please forgive me, and we'll see how this works. I noticed that today is Ta'anit Esther, the fast of Esther. At least it still is Ta'anit Esther here in New Jersey when I'm doing this Dvar Torah. And I thought it might be a nice idea to discuss Ta'anit Esther, Purim, and prayer. According to many of our commentators, the Ta'anit Esther, the fast of Esther, is based on the fast that Esther and the Jews had prior to when Esther went to King Ahasuerus to plead for the Jewish people. I want to take a look at those psukim. They're in Megillat Esther, chapter 4, verses 15 and 16. I'll read the Hebrew and then I'll read the English. Vatomer Esther lehashiv el Mordechai, lech knos et kol haYehudim hanimtzeim b'Shushan, v'tzumu alai ve'al tochlu ve'al tishtu shloshet yamim, laila vayom, gam ani v'narotai atzum kain, uv'chein avo el hamelech asher lo chadat, v'chasher avadati. Then Esther sent back this answer to Mordechai. Go assemble all the Jews who live in Shushan and fast in my behalf. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maidens will observe the same fast. Then I shall go to the king, though it is contrary to the law, and if I am to perish, I shall perish. One of our commentators, Rav Moshe Al-Sheikh, who lived in the 16th century in Tzfat and was a student of Rav Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, writes a very interesting and insightful commentary on these psukim. Rav Al-Sheikh uses the word chadat as a clue. That word appears only twice in Megillat Esther in that particular conjugation. It appears here when Esther says, I'm going to go before the king, which is against the law. And it is also used in the first chapter when Ahasuerus' party is being described. It says, V'hashetiyah hadat ein ones, that it was legally mandated to drink without limit. Al-Sheikh and many of our other commentators are critical because the Jews participated in this party. They drank without limit, and it did not please God. And some commentators say that Haman's rise and plot against the Jews is a direct result of the Jews' participation in Ahasuerus' party. Al-Sheikh clues in on that connection and writes the following. He says, our sages stated an inventive idea. That idea is that prayer is heard better when one prays for another. In other words, when one prays for someone else, then one is answered first. So to use a really silly and trivial example, assuming that I need a new car, it's better for me to pray for my neighbor to have a new car than for me to pray for myself to have a new car. If I pray for my neighbor to have a new car, then I'll be answered first, and I'll wake up one morning and there will be a new car in my driveway. For those of you who want to try this at home, I'd be interested in hearing either by PM or email whether you're successful in this method of obtaining a new car. Moving on to a more serious example, here, Esther and the Jewish people both need something. Esther needs for the king to grant her a dispensation or to grant her clemency for breaking the law and entering the king's court without an invitation. In the time of Ahasuerus, when one entered the king's court without an invitation, one was subject to summary execution. And Esther was praying, or needed, actually, for Ahasuerus to grant her clemency. The Jews also needed something. The Jews needed to be saved from Haman's plot. So Esther said, when one prays for another individual, or one fasts for another individual, fasting is a form of prayer, then that individual is answered first. Esther said, it's not fair for you to pray for me and for me to be answered first, or for you to be answered first because you prayed for me to be saved from the king. And it's not correct for me to fast and pray for you so that you can be saved from Haman's plot. Let us both fast at the same time. You fast, and I and my maidens will fast too at the same time, and therefore we will all be answered at the same time. I want to turn to another idea, which is in a Mishnah in Masachet Brachot. Masachet Brachot deals primarily with prayer and blessings. There are some theological ideas contained, as in all of Mishnah, if you read it carefully. There are deep theological ideas contained within Mishnah besides just legal codes. One of the theological ideas is presented in the Mishnah in the last chapter, chapter 9, Mishnah 3. I'm not going to do the entire Mishnah. I'll start in the middle. The Mishnah reads, Hatzoek l'sha'avar harei zot tfilat shav. Ketzad, ta ishto me'uberet, ve'amar, yehi ratzon sheteled ishti zachar, harei zot tfilat shav. Haya ba baderech v'shama kol tzorcha ba'ir, ve'amar, yehi ratzon shelo yihu elu b'nei beiti, harei zot tfilat shav. He who prays over what has already happened, this prayer is in vain. For example, if his wife was pregnant and he said, may it be your will that my wife give birth to a boy, this prayer is in vain. If he was traveling on the way home and heard the sound of screaming in the city, and he said, may it be your will that these are not the children of my house, this is a prayer in vain. So these are two examples of prayers that are recited after the fact, after something has already happened or something has been determined, and praying to change something that has already happened or to change history is a prayer in vain. The second example in the Mishnah, however, can be understood a different way. And I think this is a deeper meaning, and I think it's an important meaning. When one is on one's way home from out of town and one hears screaming in the city, a prayer of, may it be your will that these are not the children of my house, is a very selfish prayer. Implicit in that prayer is somebody is hurting, somebody is in trouble, somebody's in danger. I hope it's not my family, I hope it's someone else. This sort of prayer, a selfish prayer wherein one prays for oneself and one does not pay attention to what is important to others, is entirely antithetical to the idea that the Alshich presented in his commentary on Megillat Esther. When we pray as Jews, we pray for others as well as for ourselves. And this is the Jewish philosophy. One needs to develop empathy for others. When someone else in our community is hurting, then we all are hurting. When I'm on my way home from out of town and I hear screaming in the city, it's not about me and me being safe. It's about us as a community being safe. We need to be able to empathize with others, and that is the only way that God will hear our prayers. I want to turn to one last source, and it is said that Yom Kippur, Yom Kippurim, is closely linked to Purim. So it's only fair that I end with part of the high holiday liturgy, which we recite on Yom Kippurim, Yom HaKippurim, and also on Rosh Hashanah, and tie it to this Dvar Torah in honor of Yom HaKippurim being linked to Purim. And that is one of the most famous parts of the Ashkenazic liturgy, and according to some part of the Sephardic liturgy, due to a printer deciding that it was nice that Unetane Tokef be included in Sephardi Machzorim as well. Towards the end of Unetane Tokef, we say Utshuva, Utfila, Utstaka, Ma'avirin et Roa Hagzera. Return, prayer, and justice avert the evil of the decree. Tshuva and tefillah I can understand. I need to return and I need to pray. Tzedakah, why is tzedakah such a fundamental component of the high holiday liturgy? Why is tzedakah justice, which we often translate as charity, but it extends to more than just monetary charity? Why is that such an important component of the high holiday liturgy and really our entire year? And that is because in order for us to pray together as a community, we need to ensure that all members of the community, even those individuals who may feel marginalized, either economically, emotionally, marginalized because they have suffered some form of sexual or emotional abuse, marginalized because they are struggling with their sexual identity and they are not adequately supported by our communities. We need to make sure that all of those individuals are part of our communities and are praying with us. Tzedakah is a way of somewhat leveling the playing field, making sure that the individuals who come to pray with us are able to pray for themselves and for us without having the anxiety of economic circumstances, without having the anxiety of emotional circumstances or any number of other forms of anxiety that people have. May it be God's will that we are able to continue coming together as a community on a regular basis, and that we model our communities in a manner where we are able to engage in tzedakah, in justice for all of those individuals in our community who are marginalized. We need every single member of Klal Yisrael to be part of our communities. We need to be able to pray together as a community to be successful in the Biat Goel Tzedek, in bringing about the coming of the Mashiach. I wish you a Freilich Purim. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this Torat Chayim.